how do you market? What's your tricks and whatnot that you use? Are you using any kind of boot suites? Are you doing it manually? How are you doing your graphics? For those who you encourage those who are buying themselves to do marketing like they're doing now.
100%. Everybody should be 100% marketing, either, like looking at a deal that you're looking at, analyzing it, or passed on, right?
Hey everyone, Dave Putz from JKP Holdings. Alongside me, as always, Mr. Nathan Turner.
Hello, hello.
Good afternoon, my man. How are you?
Very good, very good.
So, another week done. It's starting to get warmer around here in Jersey, which is awesome. And I don't know about you, but we're seeing assets come out of the woodwork recently. It seems like things are opening up. Second quarter is becoming a promptly pair that we're going to probably see some more stuff pretty soon. We'll see what that looks like. But I'm definitely interested in seeing how transition is and pricing, because that's a big thing for us right now. Is this worthwhile for people who are, buying to buy, even though inventory is available?
Yeah, I actually just Monday, I just put in a fairly large bid on 23 assets, and fingers crossed, we'll see what happens. But we'll see how pricing comes back. It's one of those unknowns. It's one of those weird times where inventory is starting to get more and more, and so naturally prices should decrease. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
So I think right now we are looking at a shift, right? We're coming out of the COVID craziness. We're seeing some hedge funds start releasing stuff, and delinquencies are going to start kind of changing, right? People are no longer getting that funds. I know that I've just heard that like Dell was laying off people. Don't know what that's going to mean in the long run. However, I think that when we look at this stuff, delinquency has always been with notes, so it's not like a new thing. It's been something that's been around since mortgages came around. But we are seeing a shift in the inventory. I mean, you were looking at too, right? In the coming weeks, we'll be talking about reverse mortgages. We'll be talking more about wraps, originating it, and buying those kind of things, and the different paper, because there was billions of dollars in created wraps, which is ridiculous. And that angles a lot differently than buying these 3% and 4% interest loads that we've seen the last 3-4 years. Yeah,
it helps us as note buyers to be able to purchase. It helps us because the interest rates are a little bit higher. They tend to be anyway. So it helps us to be able to keep that machine moving. Those 3% interest rate loans, it'll be interesting to see what happens with those over the next few years. I don't think any of those are coming up available in our world, but it'll be interesting to see what the approach is for those, because those are going to be tough to move.
And for those who don't know what I mean, when you're trying to buy a 3% loan, we always preach on this topic. You never buy them percentage of UPB or BPO. That doesn't mean anything. It's really buying on that interest rate, right? So buying in that yield or IRR. And if that interest rate's a 3 or 4, to get it to a 10 that you're looking for, or 15 or 20, whatever you look for, the discount is deeper and deeper the farther lower that original interest rate is. And we try to encourage people to kind of think differently. We're still hearing about people buying on percentage of UPB, which if you want us private talk, we can have it on how that just doesn't make sense.
10 years ago, you could do that because everything was underwater, and it was a totally different market. So 10 years ago, sure, if you want to buy it based on percentage of UPB, in most cases that made sense, but in today's market, it just doesn't.
Nope, absolutely not.
Learn and adjust and grow or die, because you can't do it the same you did 10 years ago.
Well said. We just finished up our second 5-week course. We're going into our 6 to 10 week course with those people who completed the 1 through 5. A couple of previous clients have been on here. We'll actually have one of our recent clients kind of share what we talked about, from building a bid calculator to due diligence. And in the second 6 to 10 weeks, we'll be talking about systems and organizing your vendors and managing them, how to do that, BK, and also originating notes and partials and whatnot.
Yeah, some advanced strategies. Some
Yeah,
things
it's been
probably not.
class has been really awesome, because it allows us, you and I, to talk about how our methods are different, even though we talk the same talk.
Yeah, yeah. And we've both been doing this for a number of years now, and it's interesting to see our different but similar approaches. The same way of getting to point A to point B to point C, but just in different ways.
Absolutely. With that said, we're talking about alternative investing, not just bank originated notes, which we've bought for many, many, many years. This market of being seller finance, not just seller finance, but buying wraps and buying reverse mortgages, is a huge topic. This whole idea. Can you speak a little about this baby of yours, DME, that's going to be talking about not just bank originated notes, and how those who may not listen to us 2 weeks ago, what they're walking into is not going to be a typical note investing conference.
No, exactly. And I've been to a lot of conferences over the years, and there's been a ton of talk about non-performing notes, because that was a huge market for us. That I don't want to say it's drying up, but it's not as plentiful as it used to be. So we've got to expand, we've got to learn, we've got to grow and learn how to do different kinds of notes. So a big purpose of what I'm trying to accomplish at DME is I want the originators to be there as well as the note buyers to be there, so that we can come together. The originators have somewhere to sell their product, and the buyers have somewhere to buy stuff.
Well
so
said.
a big meeting of everybody to come together. I want people to walk away with deals, not just contacts.
Yeah. And it's funny, we just had a master meeting of the minds last Wednesday with a small group of people and from different sectors. And they all said the same thing, that we're marrying two different huge networks of people that's never really connected before. And they love it. We love it. And it's a completely different way of thinking. So in the coming weeks, we'll be doing more topics about this, so you guys can learn a little bit more about it from a legal stance as well as an investment stance. So
but go get your tickets, DME, diversifiedmortgageexpo.com. Tickets are live.
We'll be in June. Make sure you get down to Nashville, guys.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
So you're not big in this. I'm trying to get bigger in this, but it's not my forte. But one of the things we try doing is automating, not automating, but kind of systemizing our stuff.
Yeah.
But we also try to systemize our marketing as well, or at least I try to. And I'm not good at it. I don't have the patience for it.
I'm worse.
Yeah. And to me, it's like, oh, right. I did more years ago, but I just don't have the time and energy. I got small kids. I got a lot going on. And to me, it takes a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
And if you go on LinkedIn or if you go on Facebook, right, one of the big things I'm going to bring him on as we talk about this here is I see Larry posting constantly, and I'm jealous. To be honest with you, I'm jealous of him, man. And this whole idea of marketing and advertising what you're doing, I wish more people did it, and I'm amazed at what you're doing. It's astonishing. So we want to bring you on here to kind of share a little bit about what you've done in the past, how you got to where you're doing, and why you're doing it. Maybe we're going to write some tidbits down of what we can do better as investors. So Larry, welcome, man. Thank you for coming this afternoon and joining us.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. Hey, Nathan. Thank you.
Hey, you bet.
So Larry's been in the space for a long time. He has some great connections and he does some great marketing. Like, before we get into that, share a little bit about how did you come across note investing? Did you take classes? How did you learn about it?
Yeah, well, I've been investing. I started investing back in 2006. I guess just like traditional, buying properties, rehabbing them, and selling them. Doing a bunch of lease options, short sales, subject tos, owner financing. I've taken back quite a bit of notes, right? And so I taking that note back, that was like my first experience. I didn't know what I didn't know because this note space is an entirely different thing from, from just like traditional, real estate, because you have to have a different mindset and you have to get out of that you're no longer the rehabber, you're rehabbing the properties. And but when I first got started, I did do a owner finance note, and I sold it, but I took a huge haircut because I didn't know, like I said, I didn't know what I didn't know in order to do this, but I never really made that transition. And then it was just funny. I bought a book. It's Be the Bank, and I forget the author's name. And that was really like the beginning where the light bulb went off for me. And then I reached out to, I took a couple other classes, and then I eventually wound up taking mentoring. And that was the really aha moment for me with getting into this note space where, if the younger me would have known what the older me knew now with that note, there's no way that I would have took that big of a haircut on that note. But, it's one of those things, you live and you learn.
So for those who are looking, I did a quick Google search on that, saying it was written by Benjamin Michael Lyons. So for those who are curious about it, did a quick Amazon search. So you got into this world of this you did the real estate thing, which I think we all kind of started with, right?
Yep.
And we stumbled across it one pathway or another. Me and Nathan shared our story before. Did you jump in it head first? Did you have any kind of education?
With the real estate, yeah. What started it all for me, believe it or not, is the Carlton Sheets course. So that's dating my age. I'm going to be 53 this July, so that's dating me. And so I got the course, and then I got the upgrades and all the other stuff. But it was always that analysis of paralysis. It's like I knew in my head, but there was still that disconnect, right? So I eventually wound up once again doing mentoring. He's a pretty popular guy. And so it was a significant amount, but I've far made that more than just that little investment. So yeah, it was, it's having taking classes or some type of coaching or some type of mentoring program. It 100%, takes you from, from 0 up to 180 in a relatively short period of time. And that was a thing for me because I was just kind of like hem-hawing around with it and not really, doing anything.
Sure.
And then I took the mentoring, and then, it's like I just started getting the deals one after the other and just rehabbing the properties and selling them.
I was talking to somebody just yesterday.
Options. I'm sorry.
I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and she was talking about wanting to get into notes and everything. I said, you absolutely can, and anybody can do that.
Yep.
However, you've got to learn the business because it's not as straightforward as real estate, and there are a lot of nuances. And when we got started 12, 14 years ago, pricing was such that we could make all kinds of mistakes, and we did. And we still made money enough that we could keep going. But in today's market, you've got to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, 100%. And that's the other thing. You got to take that you got to flip that mindset that you are no longer the rehabber, you're the bank.
Right.
And it's still, and I still have that, rehabber mentality.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. I'm the bank. I'm the bank. I'm the bank. And there's a complete difference between the two.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done the same thing. I'm like, no. How does the bank do this? Okay. I'm the bank. I'm the bank.
I probably the distraction for a second. I saw the feed on the LinkedIn feed kind of died for a second. So I got to apologize. Hopefully it's better now. It's amazing when you shift that gear, that mindset change you go through, because you don't realize it while you're going through it, that this is a whole new world. And then it becomes overwhelming, right?
100%.
So how did you make that transition? And how did you learn by doing? Did you take a specific class to learn?
Yeah, reaching out, having a mentor, and then also buying a bunch of books, and then also a bunch of YouTube videos. It's just really kind of, consuming and just getting that jargon down, because there is a lot of information that you as a note investor have to understand before buying your first note. Just, all the due diligence, the things that you have to do to make sure that, you are in, or your investors are in a really good spot to where if you do have to take that property back, your exit strategies, and, you're not going to take a bath on it.
Right. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you dive in head first into the space of this great unknown and becoming the bank, right? That's a huge thing. Go from landlord to lien lord, as the old saying is. Your first deal, what did it look like?
It was amazing. It was a non-performing note in South Carolina, and the funny thing is it was when I got it, when I reached out, the servicer actually reached out to the borrower and developed, got the phone number, contacted him. He actually called me, and he said that you are the first person. Let me back up. He got the number, called him, and then he gave the number to me, and then I called the borrower. And when I spoke to the borrower, he said, you are literally the first person that this loan has been sold like 7 or 8 times that has reached out to me. And he said, I have been trying to get this thing back on track. And he goes, I couldn't get in contact with anybody. And yeah, so now it's a performing note. And and I modified it for him. So that way, I helped him. But for me, I developed I know you have to, same thing with your tenants, right? Keeping it professional and personal. But with this borrower, it's really become more of a friendship with him, so it's a really good feeling being able to help him get back on track. And then he's been making his monthly payments like clockwork, and, every couple months he'll reach out to me just to say, hey, how you doing? Just, checking on me, and, things like that. So it was really amazing.
That's really cool. Are you based in South Carolina? Was that a local note for you?
No, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I bought fair share in Cincinnati, of course. Don't do much there anymore. We all mostly started in Franklin County, as most people who've been around for a while. We bought a whole lot in Franklin, but Franklin's probably the easiest county for online records, online everything. It is amazing. And you start branching out. You got into this space by mentors, resources. When was that point you got into the space where you're like, wow, this is working? Was it a deal? Was it a conversation you had? Was it an event you went to?
I think it's all of the above. It's one of those things where I knew it was going to work, just because, I saw the returns, and just with the previous experience that I had with the real estate, rehabbing properties, wholesaling them, subject to deals, short sales, owner finance note at 0% interest. It's like I knew all this stuff was going to work, and if I buy it right, I knew I'm going to make money, so it's just having that. For me, though, having that previous experience with already in this real estate space, I knew once I made that shift, as long as I buy it right at the yield that I need to buy it at, and then if I hold on to it for 2 to 3 years, then I'm going to be able to, make that profit, and then be able to sell that note to some other investor.
Gotcha.
And make sure that other investor down the road has a pretty good yield. Because, every time that I approach these notes, I want to give my investors or myself the return that I want to get. But also, when I'm holding these things for a couple years, I want to make sure that I give that investor a good return too. So, I just don't want to leave, scraps on the bone. I still want to, have something substantial for that end investor.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
let's shift gears here for a second. You're bringing other investors on. You're doing great stuff with it. Why'd you start marketing it? Was it to gather from other people if they want to invest? Was it to just share and network? What was your premise on starting it? And was that the outcome you ended up with?
Yeah, it's all, you know, and that's the thing. I know another mentor that I had, you know, he would always, you know, marketing, you know, is a moving parade, right? So you never know who you're gonna touch. And that was always something that I've done with my previous real estate investing, was always marketed, you know, postcards and things like that. But yeah, it's now with, you know, LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, it's even more prevalent. Yeah, it's about being at the right place, right time, because you know, life is a moving parade. You never know who you're going to touch or who's going to see your message. And you know, I just want to let, when I'm doing my marketing, I want to let the like the banks and the hedge funds and, you know, other note investors know that, hey, I'm active in this space and I'm buying these notes. And I just, you know, I'm looking at a set of 9. I made them out of the 9. I made 2 offers. You know, 1 got accepted. You know, I have a weekly newsletter that I'll do a deal or dud. And so, you know, it's like some of the properties that I looked at, whether they were a deal or some of them were a dud. And so that way I'll, you know, I'll blast that out to everybody. But yeah, it's just all about basically being in front of that person to let them know that, hey, I'm here, I'm buying. The other thing is the everybody is kind of, you know, a buyer, seller, or a funder, right? And so as long as you take that approach and you think of that somebody's looking at it that may not be a note investor, but somebody else is looking at it, they see some of my other marketing that I'm doing, that there's, you know, the above average returns, and you're secured by you know, a tangible asset, real estate, that they see that and they become interested. I've had many conversations with investors by just seeing my post either on LinkedIn or Facebook, and they reach out to me, and we, you know, if they're local, we'll go to lunch or dinner and have a conversation. And, you know, I just basically just tell them exactly, you know, how my program works, and, you know, how these are the kind of returns that I'm looking at, and, you know, and just kind of take it from there.
So in Cincinnati, when you're going for lunch, Skyline or Gold Star?
Skyline, 100%.
There
Yeah.
Nice.
We all got introduced as we're going through and doing our stuff and going through Cincinnati, and somebody says, hey, you got to have this chili. And I'm like,
Yep.
What are you talking about? And now I crave it. Order it
Yeah.
online and have it shipped to my house. It's so good.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
So, you know, connecting with local people is a real big thing in the space, right? If you're
Yeah.
not doing it in person, you're not flying out there, getting on a phone call and talking to people, because they know the local market.
Right.
It passes the BPO mindset. It really kind of gets you deep dive into what areas do I want to avoid, what areas I don't want to avoid, and
Yep.
why do I not want to avoid them? Because somebody may not like an area doesn't mean that I shouldn't invest in it.
Yep. Exactly.
The mindset, it matters. We talked before about the fact that a lot of people put it, well, it's not a good property. Well, that doesn't tell me anything about the property, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Tell me what you don't like about it. Well, it's under 100,000. That doesn't mean I'm not going to like it. It may not mean that you like it or not.
Or the one I hear all the time is even from realtors, anybody who goes by the house and they're like, oh, it's in bad shape. I'm like, that is so subjective. What does bad shape mean? Like, are we talking it needs a paint job, or are we talking there's mold all over in the house?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and see, that's the thing, because with all the all the properties that I've bought and or looked at, right? And it's very subjective when it comes to bad shape, because I'm telling you, there's some properties that I look at that somebody goes, that is 100% a turd. I'm thinking, oh my God, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I'll buy that all day, every day.
Yeah, that's a nugget right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears here for a minute. When you're talking about your marketing, how do you market? What's your tricks and whatnot that you use? Are you using any kind of Hootsuite? Are you doing it manually? How are you doing your graphics? For those who, you encourage those who are buying themselves to do marketing like they're doing now.
100%. Everybody should be 100% marketing, either, you know, like looking at a deal that you're looking at, analyzing it, or passed on, right? Take that and put that up there. So I do several things. I use there's a program called Email Octopus. And so that helps with like the marketing and things like that out to like the banks and the hedge fund managers to make that connection. But I also have a virtual assistant that works for me part-time. She's doing about 25 hours a week, and between 15 to 25 hours, depending on, what I have. So she'll do the marketing for me, where she'll post some of my graphics into LinkedIn, Facebook, and also on Twitter. I know there's a couple different programs like Hootsuite and things like that.
Are you doing the graphics? Is she doing the graphics?
I do a lot of the graphics, but I'm actually showing her how to do that. So, I'm just kind of giving her general ideas. And then I'm using, for the graphic program, I'm actually using canva.com.
Yeah.
It's a really good low-cost tool.
I'm the same with you, right? You can get the free one, you can pay one,
Yep.
But they have some great utilities. You can push to different platforms.
Yeah.
I'm still learning a little about it, but I'm not playing too deep into it. So you did this for what's your reason for marketing? What's your goal that you're hoping for these marketing ads to get you?
It's connections, networking, networking with bank. I have a lot of bank managers and hedge funds, and then I also follow a lot of the bank managers and the big ones, and even, I guess small to large, other note investors. So that way they can see what I'm doing, that I'm active in this space. And then the other thing is to have people approach me for private money, possibly loaning money to me to buy these assets. So, like I said, somebody's a buyer, seller, or funder, and so I'm always looking at it from that approach. I mean, case in point, I went to a REIA meeting just this past Wednesday night, and I hadn't been to a REIA meeting in God knows how long. And then it's a local chapter here, and I went, and they were talking about whether it's a commercial properties deal or no deal, and then but before that, people that you get up and you introduce yourself, and I got up and I said, hey, my name's Larry Hoffman. I buy non-secured notes. I also create lucrative deals to give people an above average return. If you need anything, if you want any more information, reach out, stop me before I leave.
Oh.
And so at the end of the thing, I had two people approach me about, one, understanding more about the note, but two, also possibly being a funding partner for me.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's
So
great.
it's all about networking. You just got to open your mouth and talk.
Open your mouth.
Yeah.
Open your mouth. You post on LinkedIn, you post on Facebook, Twitter. Where do you think is the best? If you had to pick one of the three, where is your best secret for those who are listening in or saying, I don't have the time to post this stuff? Where would you say the best place to start off? Where do you get the best connection with either funding, capital wise, or even that connection?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn is like number one, and then definitely Facebook, because I on Facebook, I have friends and family seeing a lot of the things that I'm working on, and then they actually reach out to me as well about I guess being curious about what's going on, and then potentially being a private investor at some point in the future. But yeah, definitely LinkedIn is in my opinion is number one.
And that's for funding partners. That's for deals.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you feeling that this marketing has increased or decreased in the last, say, 6 months? Are you doing more of it, less of it? What are your feelings are?
Yeah, I'm doing more, and I actually need to do more. And that's why, I'm going to have my VA actually ramp it up a little bit more. I don't want to be like too in your face with it. I want to post more of the deals that I'm working on,
Sure.
More of the deals that I passed on. So that way, people can actually see that, that Larry is actually out there in the space looking at these deals,
Sure.
and he's making offers on these things.
Mm-hmm.
Have you got a deal passed to you that was just not normal, right? Like that crazy seller finance deal. Has any of those kind of crossed your paths, or is it pretty much been that other investors' assets that they're trying to sell off to you? And have you gotten deals from these posts?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've got several Facebook people that reach out to me, and a lot of the seller finance notes, and a lot of times they're just like newly originated.
Mhm.
Me personally, I like to see at least 3 months to 6 months of seasoning,
Sure.
and a little bit of a like 10 to 20% down on the down payment. I mean, I'm actually working on one that actually came from a Facebook post.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's accepted. And so I'm just basically, I was in the process of doing the due diligence, so I just need to get back with him and to basically finalize it.
That's great. That's great.
What other systems are you doing email wise, marketing wise? Are you doing email marketing as well?
When I do email marketing, I do. But what it is, it's strictly for the people that opted into my to my website. Now I hadn't, I got off of doing the weekly email every Monday morning. I would do a, I stopped like right after Christmas, and I just, from Christmas up until about now, I've just been slammed. So, and I need to, instead of doing the weekly, I'm going to go back to maybe just do it every couple weeks or something like that. And so I send out a email to my private lenders, letting them know. It's just basically like a kind of like a catch up, like I do things I do with my fiance or my kids. And then I have a deal or dud, and then I have a real estate section, and those are for my private lenders. But basically, I take that same information and then I do a LinkedIn newsletter. And I was sending that out every Wednesday. So I'm just going to switch it to either do it every Tuesday or every other Tuesday for both of them. And I'm telling you that marketing, the LinkedIn newsletter and also the email marketing to my private lender list, it 100% works, because I'm constantly letting them know that, hey, I'm analyzing a deal. I'm here. And then they also get to see more of a personal side of me, with Joni, my fiance, or, my kids, that, I'm just not some fly by night, person. I want them to have a relationship with me, and just not the business.
Mm-hmm.
So you get these assets in, you're doing a lot of due diligence.
I do.
Do you have automation tools or systems behind the scene to help you just juggle all this?
I am in the process of creating my own macro for Excel, right? Because 1 or 2 or 5 is pretty easy to analyze, but oftentimes, I'll look at tapes where they're, 30, 50, 100, and you whittle them down, and then, out of like of 100, maybe you whittle it down to like, say, 30. Well, 30, it takes a lot of time to do the due diligence on. So right now, I just have a very, very rudimentary Excel spreadsheet macro where it takes those assets, and I got to format them into the right column, and it does all my due diligence for me. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is, there's still some manual automation that I have to do, is like go out, check the taxes, go out, check Pacer, see if they file bankruptcy, look at the statute of limitations based off the length of the loan. So that way, because when somebody gives you like an unpaid principal balance and it hadn't been collected in like 18 years, well, there's a statute of limitations on what you can actually collect. So that true UPB, or what they're saying, isn't what you're going to be able to collect on. So that, you got to figure out what you can collect on. Yeah. So there's little things that, like those things I still need to manually do, but I'm going to try to incorporate all of that into, I don't think I will be able to do that in this macro, but turning it into like a web service type of thing where, it'll like scripts where it'll go out and do a lot of that. But yeah, right now it's a little bit of manual and a little bit of automation.
Nathan knows where I'm going to go with that, right? So I do a lot. We'll catch up after the show.
Okay.
I do a lot of that kind of automation that's in blink of an eye kind of thing. And a lot of the tax stuff I pull from my own due diligence tools, where I can pull 5 different valuations of property, annual tax amounts, and bedroom bathrooms, see if it's listed for sale, see less. I have all that stuff there. And I also do a lot of spreadsheet automation. So we could definitely talk after the show on some
Okay.
tricks and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a big thing for me, Dave, is especially with the automation, a big I usually I look at the yield to maturity and then the IRR on that just to make sure, because I do a percentage of the UPB in order to get my yield to maturity and my IRR, right, to make sure that I'm within line, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of times where I'll forget to do that. And then I'm like last minute, I'm like, oh, dang, I got to go back in. And then I also have to add in like the due diligence and then, like backing out servicing cost and all this other stuff where, my initial offer, thank God I didn't submit it. And I'm like last minute, it's like, I'm thinking I totally forgot to do this, this, and this, and I got to go back in and then reassess it. So when you do have those automated tools, they 100% make a big difference.
Well, I did ask for some questions. We just got a boatload of questions at once. So I'm going to try me and Nathan go back and forth. Nathan, I'll let you start with the first one. Make sure you mention the name. And
so Gabe Cass, good old Gabe. How you doing, Gabe? He's asking about, do you use text messaging? Do you text message your leads?
I don't. No. Not, that's something that I was looking at doing that with my private lenders. That my investor that's going to fund the money, but I don't know. It's one of those things where I just think it's kind of like less personal. For me, I want to have more of that personal connection with somebody. So I just go and my private lender list. I mean, I think it's only about 50 something people or something like that. But out of that, I mean, I have about $5.5 million, right? And so I'll just start calling people and just having a conversation. But no, I don't text message leads or anything like that.
Cool. I use texting a lot, especially with realtors. I do a lot of texting with realtors. It's just fast and easy. Oftentimes it's like, hey, did you check on the property? Something.
Okay.
I don't need to make a phone call on that.
And a lot of realtors are so busy they don't even want to bother. Like, just give me a quick thing. So we have
interesting.
I'm going to stick with Gabe's questions now, to kind of bump them together, and we'll go back. We have a more. So Gabe also asked, what states are you marketing for? Are there certain states you're trying to target right now?
No, I buy nationwide except for New York, New Jersey, California, and Illinois. It's oftentimes though, when I do get a tape, my top 5 is, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, South Carolina, North Carolina, Texas, and Florida, right? Or top 7. So and Georgia. I typically, when I do buy in Georgia, I usually buy in my self-directed IRA. So if I'll sift and sort the tape from those, and if there's not a lot to choose from those, like 7 or 8, then I'll branch outward. But I'm not specifically targeting, specific note investors that I know has a lot of notes in like South Carolina. A lot of my marketing is geared towards a lot of the banks and the hedge funds. So I have, personal relationships with these guys, and also servicing companies where they'll send me the tapes, and then, I'll go in and I'll sift and sort what I want, and then I'll make offers on them.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think we'll get tomorrow's question in a few minutes. I think what you said there real quick about the Georgia thing, for those who may not know, there's a licensing requirement in Georgia. And if you do buy it, I know Gabe will contest it, right? But if you do buy in Georgia and you're not licensed and you're buying in a company name, it's a felony. So just for those who are knowledgeable, the IRA kind of surpasses it because you're buying in a private personal name. But check the local laws for that stuff. Same thing with Illinois and stuff like that. They have debt license requirements that it can be expensive if you're not buying enough. So I'll let you hit up Mara's questions, Nathan.
Yeah, so I'll go with the first one first, and then I got a follow up to it. So do you think the market is shrinking or growing? What are you seeing out there?
Me personally, I believe it's growing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's especially with a lot of the COVID moratorium being lifted, and you know, and then with the economy and you know, the recession. I don't care what people say. We were 100% in a recession, and so it is 100%. My opinion, this is just the beginning of it.
Yeah.
You know, and there are going to be way more people in default, and that's with me buying these notes. My number one goal is to not foreclose on them, is to get them reperforming, because, you know, foreclosure is the very last thing that I want to do. And if I can help somebody, I will 100% help somebody get back on their feet and start making these payments and stay in that house.
Yeah, absolutely. So his second question is, what's the change from 2006 to now? But 2006, you were doing properties, right? So when was your first note?
Oh, what was it? About a couple years ago. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So when did you start studying and started looking at stuff?
Oh God, I think I started studying probably about 5 years ago. That, you know, I started, you know, like buying a bunch of books and courses and things like that, and just kind of getting my feet wet within the area, trying to learn the jargon. And it was, once again, it was always the analysis of paralysis.
Yeah.
You know, and that was a nice thing about it, you know, having like a coach or a mentor, like, you know, that, you know, they've been there and they've done that. And, you know, you can reach out to that person, especially in this note space, because it's, you know, it's the fear of the unknown, you know. But once you do your first one, it's kind of easier than your second, then your third. You're like, oh God, okay, yeah, making mountain out of a molehill. It basically, it just the bottom line is, you just really need to do your due diligence on it. You know, look at your numbers, do your due diligence, and you know, and then you can always run it by somebody. You know, that just to make sure that you're not maybe you're not seeing something that the other person may see.
Yeah, and I mean, Dave and I can tell you, over the years, my goodness, you continue to learn. There's so many different situations. It's almost impossible to anticipate every possible scenario.
Oh yeah.
So you keep learning, you keep figuring stuff out. You talk
statute limitations, I thought, was a one number thing, and I learned just about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, that there's 6 different pillars of statute limitations throughout the states, from next due date to last payment date to maturity date to you know, if start foreclosure. There's so many things, and certain states allow certain things. So yeah, it's definitely a huge thing that your calculator can grow and grow and grow until you're just monstrosity like I have.
Right. And your network.
Yes.
But what I will tell you is, the thing that really helps me is, especially when you get the collateral file. So you know, you want to make sure that you have all, you know, from the start of the creation of the loan to when you buy it, like all the allonges and all the assignment of mortgages, and, you know, just make sure you have everything. And if you don't understand that, you can always reach out to an attorney. I have an attorney that I reach out to, and you know, I'm like, okay, I'll send over the collateral. I'll look at them and make sure that everything is there, but then I'll send it over to him, and then just to double make sure that everything is there. And then he'll say, hey, you're good. Go ahead with the deal.
Yeah. It's amazing because due diligence, everyone's different, right? So people say, well, define due diligence. Well, I'm going to define the way I do it. Nathan will say differently. You're going to say something different. We have some pretty much the same thing. We're pulling our O&Es, we're pulling our value of properties, we're reviewing collateral are the big 3, right? But we also get into servicing notes, and we also get into pay history and consistency. And as Nathan says, the data tape also has some points in there, like the date of the data. That's another key point. So it's interesting because, you know, I got into notes in 2010. I bought my first one like late 2011. And what shifted from then to there now is what Nathan said earlier, is the collateral's changed. The asset used to be all underwater. We used to bid based on percentage of UPB because everything was underwater, and the fact that we're buying it so cheap that it didn't matter if our calculation is wrong. You know, when you're buying 30 cents, now you're buying at 60, 65, 70. It was a completely different market back then. as it shifted along, all we bought was non-performing back then. And you'll find now we're buying more performing than ever before because the pricing has changed and our market has changed because our desired return for non-performing is much higher because of the risk levels.
Yeah,
So,
Part of it too is I think we're just getting older, Dave, and it's
let's work.
honestly, the performers are easier to manage. And
Yes.
that's
BKs and all stuff, you know, the hassle of the BK tracing down the trustees.
Mhm.
And looking at thousands and thousands of assets, your brain kind of goes, oh,
I'm
right.
just, I still like to hustle, but maybe not quite as much.
Yeah, we gotta get our kids doing it, hustling for us,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's the goal, right?
well, I just bought a note that's in bankruptcy, and so bankruptcy chapter 13,
Yep.
and I'm telling you, it's like you do all your due diligence, and chapter 13 bankruptcy, it's a performing note,
Oh,
and I got it at a substantial discount. And then I was able to reach out, or the borrower actually reached out to me because what I did was I got in contact with the attorney of the BK attorney, and I sent
just real
her.
quick for a second. Those who don't know, he's saying you cannot reach out to your borrower if they're in bankruptcy. They
Right.
will speak
Very
to their
careful.
attorney. Do never speak to the borrower in BK. Sorry.
Yep. And so exactly, and so I reached out to her attorney, just introducing myself, just saying, hey, I'm the new owner of this note. I want to go ahead and try to do a loan modification because looking over all the bankruptcy documentation, I just felt like the plan set her up for failure, and I just said I want to go ahead and just modify this loan for her. And if you could just have her, if you could talk to her, and then talk to my attorney, and then let's just get it figured out. She sent the email to her, the borrower called me, and she was literally crying on the phone. I mean, it's seeing, that's the thing. It's such a good feeling to be able to help somebody that's going through such a traumatic experience, in their lives. It's amazing. But, just 100%, I kind of got off tangent, but 100% do all your due diligence, before you buy the note.
BK, I know Nathan's not big on it. I love BK because you're getting the constant payment of the mortgage payment, but you're also getting the REIA. It's like a bonus kick on it, right? You hate when BK uses a tool to avoid foreclosure. I get that. But when it's payment, it's awesome. I think we answered John's question is where your notes are coming from. Most of the time, they come from banks, hedge funds, and other investors who are out there. And you're getting it for marketing. People,
right.
Companies I see in part of this the live feed here. Let's see some more marketing from you guys. I'd like to see Astonishment and say, wow, I've seen his name out there constantly. You may not remember where you saw it from, but if the name stands out because you've seen so much of it, and understand that the algorithms through these social medias,
right,
you make posts 3 times a day and no one saw it.
Yep.
It's just what it is. We had a question from Gene Davis that throughout the years, you created an SOP or process map that walks you through the due diligence. How do you walks you through how do you do your due diligence? How do you tell if a note is worth offering on? Okay. How do you know if a note is worth making a bid on it? I guess is the question.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that's kind of like, I guess that's a subjective question, because it's one that I might find, acceptable. Dave or Nathan may just like, we're going to pass on it. That's where it's subjective. And that's where I got to look at it on a note by note basis. If something can be cured, and that's why I 100% rely on my attorney, because even though it looks good to me, within the collateral file, I'll send it over to my attorney. He goes, well, wait a minute, it's missing, whatever, X, Y, and Z. We can't fix this. And then I go back to the seller. I can't buy it because it's my attorney is telling me it's missing this. It can't be cured. Because I'm always thinking in the long run that, in a couple of years, 2 to 3 years, I may sell this note off to another investor. And I want to, because the buck stops with me when I buy this note, I want to make sure that collateral file, everything is there, 100% intact. So when I sell it to the next investor, they don't have to worry about anything because it's been 100% gone through with a fine tooth comb.
Yeah.
So I think what he's asking more about when you're at the tape level, when you're making an indicative offer, what makes a note worth making an offer on? What makes it not worth making an offer on?
Oh, I see.
Obviously,
Okay.
state's a big one, right? Versus state, I'm presuming you're looking at state. What are the numbers are you looking at to decide if you even bother looking at that asset?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I like notes that are like, typically what I'll do, I'll sift and sort, and then I'll take the principal and interest times 12, or, take the principal and interest minus the servicing cost of, like a non-performing note, $90, whatever, and multiply that by 12. So I'll get my, my yearly, principal and interest, and then I'll divide that by, what I'm going to offer to see what my initial interest rate, my cash on cash is going to be. So if it's like, like the 10s, 12s, 15s, the cream kind of rise to the top, those are the ones that I'm going to start, really looking at. And then I'll start doing a little bit more due diligence, and then looking at the yield to maturity and the IRR, and then all the other stuff, just to make sure, and if I bought it for X, that my, my yield to maturity is, I like to see at least 13% or higher. And so when I get those, and I'm like, shoot, they look good. Everything looks good. It falls within the states that I like. And then everything comes back with like the taxes. Everything looks good on the collateral file. Send it over to my attorney. He signs off on it. I'm like, I'm all in.
Yeah. Me and Nathan talked about this before, what our things are. We have certain states we look at. One of the first things we look at is interest rates, right? If I'm looking at a performing asset at 3%, there's nothing you can do to get that 3 to a 10. I discount it so dramatically in a yield formula. We bid everything on our IRR, but it's kind of the same thing as yield, but you can't get a 2% to a 10 that easily, right?
Right.
So the big one, if you're creating originating notes, and I know Gene does this kind of stuff. So interest rate's the big one. The state it's in is a big one too, because if you're creating in, say, Florida versus Texas, the time frame is gigantic.
Yep.
Right? You go from 12 months in Florida plus sometimes to 3 to 6 months max kind of thing in Texas to go to a foreclosure, which means that my return can double a year in Texas while I'm waiting for Florida to work it out. So the different variables in the cost differences as well.
Yeah. But and that's the thing, when because you did brought up brought up the interest rates, like the lower interest rates. I actually I bought 6 notes from a mid-size investment firm, and 3 of them, they had low interest rates on them. But I got those at about 30 to 40% of the UPB. So, and it met that yield.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's one of those things where it's right place, right time.
Yeah.
He just wanted to unload. They just wanted to unload them. And that's why, another thing I always do too, is I always ask the persons what their price expectations are, because, if they're telling you 90% and you're coming back at like 60, I'm like, you're just going to be wasting your time. But a lot of times they'll just tell you highest and best, because, they're sifting and sorting from all these other people too. And that's where it's like, even if it's at like a 3%, I'm like, I'm just going to go ahead and make my offer and see if it takes. And then here's the other big thing too, is I 100% follow up on all my offers. And it's just like every couple months, I'll just follow up, and I use Pipe Drive as my tool. And I have a bunch of swim lanes, and I have a lot of things that like these workflows. So when I move them into different, lanes, it'll automate like an email out to my attorney. It'll another one out to the BPO and title work and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then I have a task list of things that need to be done.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That's awesome. So just going back to the, preferences of notes, and I think that's what makes this such a great community, is because we're competing against each other sometimes, but a lot of the time we're not, because I have preference this way and you have preference that way.
Yep.
And so it allows us to kind of come together and really collaborate because we're not
Yes.
necessarily direct competitors.
Nope.
We sometimes compete on specific assets, but a lot
Right.
of the time we don't. And that makes it really fun to be able to get together.
Right.
It's different from a local realtor, investors buying the same rehab house in the same block, where we're not,
Exactly.
a lot of times where like your yield may be different, your goal may be different. Maybe you want the property, maybe you're into space to get the
Right.
property back and rent it out, where I have no interest in that stuff, right?
Right.
But some people are like, listen, I want to do that to get this and get that. Maybe you're doing it by yourself and you don't need the 15, 20% yield. Maybe
Yep.
8 makes sense for you and you can beat me on certain deals, right? So it all depends on what your angle is. Maybe you're buying for your IRA, which again, as long as you beat the market, you're okay with it.
Yeah, and see, Dave, you just brought up, because I was just going to talk about that, because and that's where you have to figure out like what your money costs are too,
Mhm.
because if you're borrowing money at 6%, you need to get at least 12%. If you're 8%, you got to get 16%.
Yeah.
So that kind of dictates, the kind of yield that you want. But if you are buying it in your self-directed IRA, I mean, a simple 8%, 9% is sufficient. I mean, it's like, where else are you going to make a 9% return
Yeah.
secured by a tangible asset?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll take that all day, every day.
Yeah.
So I have 2 questions before we get to LinkedIn's question from Rodney. Have you ever bought or sold a partial? And what, we'll start there. Go ahead. Have
Okay,
you bought or sold a partial before?
No, I have never bought or sold a partial. I've had made many offers on partials.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you care how many years are left in a note when you go to buy it? If it's 1 year or 20 years, does that change your?
Yeah, I like to see it have a little bit of time left
Yeah.
on it, because and once again, it kind of goes back to where you're buying it. If you're buying it in your self-directed IRA, if it has a couple years on it, and if I get it at a pretty good rate, if I'm making 9-10%, I'm totally fine with that. But if I'm buying it outside my self-directed IRA and I have 6% like money cost or something, then I'll have to get like a 12% return on that. And then oftentimes I've got to cash out my investor 2 to 3 years. I need to make sure there's enough on that back end to where I get cashed out, pay him off or her off, and then have a little bit of profit on the back end. So that's where you need to look at where you want to buy it, your money cost, and how long do you want to hold on to this thing for? Because all of that comes into effect on these things.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So the question comes from Rodney from our LinkedIn Live is great for those who can help, but what's your experience been for those who couldn't or had to foreclose? I'm not sure exactly what that question is referring to, but I guess is how difficult is it to foreclose on somebody, and what's that, if you've done it before, what are some of the pitfalls of that?
Thank God I have not had a foreclose on anybody. So, and it's one of the things, and if you do, you have people and places and systems in place. You just reach out to the attorney in that state, or a lot of times, a lot of these notes are in the process of being foreclosed. And if you can't get them back on track, you just reach out to the attorney that actually started the foreclosure and just, kind of pick up where they left, where the previous borrower left off.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I have had to foreclose on people, and the vast majority of the time I'm foreclosing on a property. It's a vacant property. They've already moved on. They've passed away, whatever. So the vast majority of the time it's an empty property. So I'm just foreclosing on the property, not a person. Every once in a while I do have to foreclose on a person. I hate doing that.
Yeah.
I hate it. But at the same time, I can't do nothing.
Yep.
So we've got to move forward in one way or another. And if foreclosure is the way that it needs to go, then it needs to go that way. And as much as I really don't like doing that, it is part of the business, and that's something that you're going to.
And you said before that you've had people cry when they're excited. I've also had the opposite side where people are crying, "Don't foreclose on me."
Yeah.
And can you do a mod? And the problem is, I can't mod someone who lost half their income or 3/4 their income, because I had a situation where the husband got sick and injured, 14, 15, and he was a breadwinner. He got injured, could not collect anything. He was collecting disability. He went from making a lot of good money to making nothing. And they could not keep the house financially. And I'm not here, you know, as much as I want to help, I can't help the situation. The
Yeah.
financials don't change anything.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't make a deal happen for them. And they cried. And I felt bad, but at the same time, I'm still a business, still investor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gabe, I won't put it in there, but Gabe mentioned he foreclosed on almost every note he's bought. Oh, Gabe. The next one I'll let Nathan ask from Facebook.
Yeah, this is Gene Davis. He's asking, what's the typical time frame that you tell your lenders that you'll have their funds tied up for?
I tell them between 24 to 36 months.
Yeah, I think that's a good time frame.
And what do you do at the end of it? Do you cash out? Do you sell the note? What's your kind of game plan for that?
Yeah, it's either I'll cash them out if I want to hold on to the note. For example, the South Carolina one, you know, I think I'm going to cash my particular investor out just because, you know, the personal relationship that I have with this borrower, you know, but yeah, typically, you know, 2 to 3 years, I'll just go ahead and just sell the note and then, you know, get the money out, cash that person out and ask them if they want to play again. And if they want to invest the money again, and then we'll do another round.
And that's a good time frame. And for people that are kind of getting started, just some of the reasoning behind that, and Larry, tell me if this is right, but this is where my mind goes, is let's say you've got a 30-year amortized note and it's 3 years in. So then you buy it at 27 years left on the note.
Yep.
The amount of principal being paid off is still very, very low.
Yep.
So 2 or 3 years from now, when I go to resell that note, that principal balance is still quite high. So it makes it much, much easier for me to resell it.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing with these, when you modify the notes, you start the clock from zero again. So, you know, 24 years, 30 years. And it's just like, I mean, that note, that's modified. It was modified last year. I mean, it's, you know, it started from zero. Right.
Yeah.
And so I can, you know, that's a conversation I want to have with my investor. Do you want to, you know, it's coming up on 2 years. Do you want to, you know, get cashed out, or, you know, you want to leave it in for another 2 years?
Right. Right.
And on that one, there's a lot of time because the principal is not, you know, it's very little that's being paid down. And that's where, you know, somebody was asking about the length of the term. That's where that comes into account, specifically on your exit strategy. If you're buying it in your self-directed IRA, it's, you know, to me, it doesn't matter because I'm buying it. You know, if I get a discount, if I get my yield, they can just totally cash me out. But if I'm using somebody's money, I got to be cognizant of that to make sure that I have enough on the back end when I go to sell this thing. And then I also try to figure out if somebody's looking for like a 10, 11, or 12% yield on that money, you know, 2 to 3 years down the road, what kind of position is that going to put me in? Am I going to be in a negative position? Do I have to come out of pocket, or am I at a pretty good position? So you 100% have to look at all that.
Yeah. All of that goes into it. So it's, there's a lot that goes into it. So
again, if you haven't done this before, I would definitely talk to people who have. Before you jump into it. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. Larry had experience before with buying real estate. So this avenue of getting capital is very carefully done, right?
Right.
Just be careful what you do. But at the same time, the only way sometimes to learn is by doing, which kind of stinks. But you got to learn it because you're going to run out of your own capital unless you're done really, really well, which is great. You're going to run out of capital. You can go multiple ways. The way Larry's doing, you have to be real careful. Nathan has a fund that he has SEC regulated. And then I have private capital that I have a partner with. We have capital, we have plenty. So in that kind of aspect, you're gonna need capital in the space. The one thing that sucks is when you do foreclose, you're not bringing any money in and you're kind of putting money out. You're constantly either A, asking for all this money up front, or B, asking for a draw every time you need to pay an attorney.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. When I look at when I get the tape in, I preferred occupied assets. You know, so that way I can, and especially if they've made a payment within the last couple years, or, yeah, a payment within the last couple years, at least they've made some attempt to make a payment. Then I look at that as a high probability of getting them back on track. And then, but if the I was just looking at a tape this morning where sifting and sorting, I had a bunch of vacant and a bunch of occupied. I'm going after the occupied first. And then I was talking to the guy selling the tape. I said on these vacant ones, I'm going to be pretty low on it because I'm going to have to 100% foreclose on these things, so because you can't go, if it's gone, if nobody's living in it, you can't get them back on track. They've already made the decision to walk away.
Yeah, and from my perspective, there's a pro and con to both sides of it. If it's vacant, it can be trashed, right?
Yeah.
But you could get a deed in the loop pretty easily. Usually, if it's occupied, they usually can modify and work things out, but they can fight you in the foreclosure too. So there's definitely a two-edged sword on either side.
Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned this before, and I don't see anyone asking it. Do you primarily buy first, or are you buying seconds as well?
No, I just buy first mortgages. Yeah, I just buy first mortgages. I don't do seconds. I got a buddy that buys second mortgages. So whenever, like a second comes up, I'll refer them over to him. But I'm strictly first mortgages.
How about land contracts or reverse mortgages? Are you looking at those kind of things?
I do. Yeah. And that's the thing with the land contracts on the modification, typically, because your name is on the deed on the land contract. I personally I do buy them, but I don't like it. And so anytime I get a chance to modify it, I'll turn it into a mortgage and get my company name off that deed, because I don't want to be
don't want to own anything.
I don't want to own anything anymore.
I get it. So we kind of talked about this a little bit before, but where do you see this market heading? Like, where are we going?
Well, we were talking earlier. I see foreclosures definitely, rising up. I see a lot of, people being laid off, and, with the more people being laid off because of the economy. And, with that, people are going to be we're going to be more foreclosures. So there's going to be an opportunity where we as note investors, we can come in. And that's why I love this, because it's like, I'm able to make money on it, but I'm also going in with the mindset of being able to help the people that want to be helped, that, that have it, that maybe something happened. They didn't really, if they did lose their job, but they were able to get back on track, get another job and make these payments again, that you can 100% help people like that. Absolutely. And that's why I love it. But yeah, I definitely see the foreclosures definitely ramping up this year.
Yeah, me too. We'll see what happens.
I'm seeing it too. I know that some of the things are kind of slurred and slow down. Our borrowers are not paying exactly on time. Trying to see that little trend. Keep an eye on it. We'll see what happens. I know that over the last few years, we significantly higher performing than we expected. It's been an amazing ride. But all rides, all situations hit and hose. So I think the cycle of that is going to come to an end quickly. And we'll see where the next tide goes. We just have to be very flexible. I appreciate you, Larry, joining us. I know that some of the people here have been real fortunate and they see your posts. Check a look at it on LinkedIn. Larry's on there. Larry's on Facebook, and he's doing some really cool stuff. So if you just want to pick his brain, ask questions, I did put it in the comments, the webinar link form. So if you want to fill it out, I can share you Larry's information.
Okay.
But definitely reach out to him if you're looking for information, or if you have an asset that you're looking to sell, reach out to Larry and see if you can make a deal happen.
Awesome.
Thank you everyone for joining in, and we'll see you guys soon. I think next one we'll be talking about is March 3rd, I think we are. We'll be talking wraps and legal stuff and origination, but also buying them, which is going to be killer for the year. So enjoy, everyone.